Pokemon's gym leaders are some of the strongest trainers in the whole franchise, but we don't usually see exactly how strong. Even the weak, early game leaders have canonically powerful teams, but as mandatory skill checks during a playthrough, their team's levels have to scale with the player's progress. In Generation 5's Black 2 and White 2 though, during the World Tournament, we get the chance to battle the full roster of gym leaders from the first 5 generations of Pokemon, all at full power. From Kanto's Brock all the way to Unova's Drayden, each with full teams of 6 Pokemon, all at consistent levels, and all holding items. These teams are the strongest versions of each gym leader up to this point, so that had me wondering, which one of them is actually the best? Could any of them be Elite Four or Champion material if they ever decided to take the League Challenge? Today we're finding out by looking at all 46 gym leaders who show up in the World Tournament, examining their teams, and ranking them from worst to best by adding up their team's total base stats. We'll see who's the biggest winners, the biggest losers, and who stands above them all. It is worth mentioning, of course, that stats aren't everything. Good distribution, abilities, held items can all give weaker Pokemon an advantage, but it's the best objective measurement of a Pokemon's power level, so to speak, so it's the fairest metric that we can work with. We'll start with Kanto and work our way up to Unova, which has a crazy 13 gym leaders to go over. So let's just get started with Kanto's weakest leader, Janine. Janine's team has a base stat total of 2,818, and it doesn't help that she specializes in the weakest type in Kanto. Her team's not all bad. The Crobat and the Tentacruel do a lot of the heavy lifting. The Weezing is pretty good too, and Arbok's not terrible. Venomoth and Ariados are really bringing this team down in terms of base stats though. Especially the Ariados, that's an early route bug Pokemon and really has no business on a gym leader's team. One solid Psychic type is walking all over this team, despite the fact that she has some pretty okay coverage between the Tentacruel's Water type and Crobat's Flying. Next is the very first gym leader in Kanto, Brock, with a base stat total of 2,860. And the most frustrating part about Brock's team is that he should be way higher on this list if he would just evolve his Ace Onix. His Geodude is now a Golem, and he's got all 3 of the Kanto fossils, plus a Relicanth for some added coverage. And that's all fantastic. These are all solid Pokemon. If he would just put that Steelix on his team, it would bump him up several spots on this list. Coming in just after Brock at a base stat total of 2,885 is surprisingly Giovanni, the last gym leader. How we go from the first one immediately to the last is beyond me, but Giovanni is a shadow of his former self here. He's evolved his Rhyhorn into Rhyperior, and he also has a Golem, plus the 2 Nidos, and that's all great. They're really contributing to the base stat total of this team. But his Sandslash and the Marowak are really questionable. The Marowak isn't even holding a thick club, so I don't know what the logic is there. And Sandslash just has an overall low base stat total, so between those 2 Pokemon, it's really dragging this team down. I expected Giovanni to be higher up on this list. After Giovanni, though, we have Sabrina with a base stat total of 2,903. And this team is one of those examples of a team that has Pokemon with low base stats, but they're still really solid Pokemon, which puts Sabrina in a tricky position on this list. The Espeon, the Slowking, and the Alakazam are all fantastic. They're all close to 500, if not higher than that. Hypno is probably my least favorite member of this team, but the big problems are the Mr. Mime and the Jinx, which is crazy to say because in Kanto especially, they are excellent Pokemon. But they have really low base stats, so for the purposes of this video, unfortunately they're dragging this team down a lot. Coming in after Sabrina with quite a step up is the Grass Gym leader Erica, and her team is pretty solid all around, with a base stat total of 3,020, over 100 points higher than Sabrina. There's a lot of grass and poison representation, which is to be expected with the Kanto grass types, but between Executor, Tangrowth, and Venusaur, her base stat totals are really high. The Vileplume, Victreebel, and Bellossom are all under 500, but all 3 of them are solid Pokemon and fit their own individual niche. This is the first example of a gym leader team in this video that really does not have a single bad Pokemon. Some low stats here and there, but not bad. Just ahead of Erica by 5 points is the Water gym leader Misty, with a base stat total of 3,025, and this team is fantastic with only one exception. The Starmie, Lapras, Golduck, and Blastoise are doing so much heavy lifting for this team. Each of them have a base stat total of 500 or more, The Slowbro is just below 500, making it really solid. The one problem on her team is the Seeking. If she just replaces this with a better water type, either a Gyarados or a Milotic or something, Misty would actually become the #1 gym leader in Kanto. With this team though, she's stuck in 3rd place. The runner-up in 2nd place though really surprised me when I put this together, and that's Lieutenant Surge with a base stat total of 3,055. 4 out of 6 ain't bad. The Magnezone, Electivire, Jolteon, and Ampharos all have 500 base stats or higher. The Raichu and Electrode are the only 2 outliers, but even the Raichu isn't that bad, sitting at just 475. Electrode is objectively the weakest member of this team, but between the Magnezone and the Electivire's insanely high base stats, those 2 more than compensate for what the Raichu and the Electrode lack. Jolteon is fantastic by itself, Ampharos also. Lieutenant Surge actually has a really good team here. He unfortunately loses out by over 100 points to the #1 gym leader in Kanto, and that is the Fire-type Master Blaine, with a base stat total of 3,159. Blaine rightfully deserves this spot. This is the first team on this video where every single Pokemon is a hit. Arcanine, Magmortar, Charizard, and Flareon are all doing wonders for this base stat total. Ninetales and Rapidash are also at 500. Not a single Pokemon below 500 on this list. Arcanine has a crazy 555 base stat total, which, as a Gen 1 Pokemon, is still nuts by today's standards. Magmortar at 540, Charizard at 535. This is an excellent team. Congratulations to Blaine for being the #1 gym leader in the Kanto region. We're moving right along and hopping next door over to the Johto region, and starting with the weakest leader in that region, as you could probably guess, is Falkner, the flying gym leader, and also the first gym leader that we battle in Johto. He's got a base stat total of 2,788. Yeah, this team is dreadful. The Honchkrow is really the only one worth mentioning, with a base stat total of 505. Everything else is below 480, and that is just sad for a gym leader's team. 3 of his Mons are early route birds that are fully evolved. It doesn't get much worse than that. The second worst gym leader in Johto is Chuck, with a base stat total of 2,825. There really is not much to write home about on this team. The Poliwrath and the Machamp are really carrying it. If the Machamp has no guard, that's actually a pretty significant threat, but other than that, there's really nothing special on this team. He gets some water coverage with the Poliwrath, and the Hitmonchan has a couple of elemental punches, but that's really about it. He is a step up from Falkner, but not by much. After Chuck is Morty, and not by much. His team has a base stat total of 2,835, just 10 points above Chuck. And looking at these Pokemon, you'd think he would be way higher. Gengar, Mismagius, Dusknoir, even Frostlass is pretty good. It's really the Sableye and the Bayonet that are dragging this team down. Sableye doesn't even have 400 base stats, and Bayonet is a relatively weak, fully evolved ghost type. The Sableye is actually pretty nasty though. It's got no weaknesses in this generation, it's packing Recover and Calm Mind, plus if it gets a stat boost from Ominous Wind. Not a bad little Sableye, but its lack of stats is really dragging Morty down. Just above Morty at 2,860 base stats is the normal gym leader Whitney. And this is another example of a moderately decent team that just doesn't have the stats to put her higher on the list. The Pokemon on the team are actually pretty good though. Miltank, Ursaring, Clefable, Tauros, and if that Ambipom has Technician, that's a huge threat. The Wigglytuff is really the only outlier as a bad Pokemon, the rest are solid. The problem is the Ursaring is the only Pokemon on the team with a base stat total of at least 500. Everything else is lower than that, and it pulls Whitney down on this list. Next up is Jasmine, with a base stat total of 2,955, and her team has some interesting choices. The Metagross, Magnezone, and Steelix are all carrying this team with the stats. The Metagross especially is our first example of a pseudo-legendary on one of these teams. And you'd think a Pokemon of that caliber would be paired with some better teammates. That Mawile should absolutely be an Aggron, or something stronger with higher stats. The Skarmory and the Forretress fill pretty decent niches by themselves. They're both very physically tanky, but neither of them hit 500, and the Mawile is especially low. The Steel-type Master could be higher on this list if she just replaces some of these weaker Mons. Just above Jasmine is Bugsy at 2,985. Forretress makes a return on this team, but the rest of the Pokemon are over 500 in their base stats. These are all solid picks. Caesar, Pinsir, and Heracross can all kind of be seen as this trio of counterparts. Shuckle is surprisingly high in the stats department with 505, crazy defenses, and then Yanmega is just a beast. I love seeing these early game gym leaders up towards the top of this list. This is really cool to see Bugsy in third place. Second place for Johto goes to Price, with a stat total of 30-30. Mamoswine, Cloyster, Lapras, and Weavile are insanely strong. Jinx, again, we talked about that with Sabrina's team earlier. Low base stats, but still a strong Pokemon by itself. And then Dugong is also a solid pick. It's really the Lapras, Mamoswine, and the Cloyster that are bringing the total value up. Each of them have over 525 in the base stats. Weavile is also extremely strong, and just check out the type diversity on this team. Price has some really good coverage with Ground, Psychic, Dark, and Water to complement his Ice specialty. The number one gym leader in Johto, though, and you probably could have seen this coming a mile away, is the Dragon Master Claire, and her team is just unfair. 3 pseudo-legendaries is ridiculous. Her base stat total is 3,315. Salamence, Dragonite, and Garchomp are putting up 1,800 of that just by themselves. And then we've got Kingdra sitting at a happy 540, and Druddigon and Altaria, although they're just below 500, they're close enough to where it doesn't matter. 3 pseudo-legends on the team is insane. Claire is going to be really tough to beat, and she is the strongest gym leader in Johto, and so far, the strongest gym leader in this video. We're now moving on to the Hoenn region, and here we have our first example of a set of gym leaders that is more than just 8. When we battle the twins, Tate and Liza in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, we usually battle them at the same time, as if they were presented as one character. However, in this list, they actually have their own individual teams. They both come out to the same base stat total, though, of 2,918, so they're effectively in the same spot in 8th place. Starting with Tate, the strongest Pokemon on his team are the Reuniclus, the Gallade, and the Claydol. Bronzong can also put up a pretty strong fight, but the Solrock and the Xatu are bringing the base stat total of this team down quite a bit. And the same is true for Liza, who has almost the same lineup, just with counterpart Pokemon. The Gallade is a Gardevoir, the Reuniclus is a Gothitelle, and Solrock is a Lunatone on Liza's team. But again, they both have 2,918, so they're both tied for 8th place. After the twins, we have Brawly, with a pretty solid fighting lineup. His base stat total comes out to 2,937. And the No-Guard Machamp, the Heracross, and the Scrafty are all adding some pretty good stats to this team. The Breloom and the Hariyama are kind of dragging it down, though, despite the fact that Breloom is actually a really solid fighting-type Pokemon. The team has some pretty okay type diversity between Dark, Grass, and Bug, so it's not like a Psychic type can come in and just walk all over this one. The Hoenn region is where we're starting to see more diversity between the generations, with each generation having representation on these teams. Not a bad team for Brawly, and I should mention that Hoenn's gym leaders are actually all pretty close in their base stat value. They're all within about 150 points to one another, so they're pretty even in terms of their power level. Just above Brawly is Winona, with 2,950 for her base stat, and this is one of the most type-diverse teams in this entire video. Dragon, Psychic, Water, Steel, Grass, and Dark all have representation on this flying type trainer's team. The Gyarados and the Honchkrow are doing most of the heavy lifting. Altaria and Sigilyph are close enough to 500, but the Tropius and the Skarmory are what's bringing Winona down here. Still, the type coverage is insane, and the Pokemon that she actually has are really decent by themselves. Another example of lower stat Pokemon that are actually pretty good, case in point with Skarmory. Right after Winona is the other W gym leader in Hoenn, Watson, with a base stat total of 2,985. Watson is basically just a worse version of Lieutenant Surge. Just like Surge, he's got the Electrode, the Raichu, the Ampharos, and the Magnezone. Magnezone especially is adding a lot to the base stat total of this team, alongside the Rotom Wash form, both of which are over 500. Manectric and Electrode are the 2 weak links in this team, and they're the reason that Watson won't ever get close to Surge in this list. Still not bad though, and Rotom Wash is a pretty unique Pokemon for this team. Just above Watson, coming in at 2,991 base stats, is the final gym leader in Emerald, Hoenn. Just like his gym battle, this is a great team with excellent type coverage. He's got Dragon, Ice, Dark, Ground, and Rock coverage. The Kingdra, Walrein, and the Politoed all have excellent base stats. Crawdon and Whiscash are on the lower end at 468 apiece. And alongside Relicanth, they kind of bring this team down, but the Kingdra and Walrein kind of counter that. It's a decent team all around, and like the example of Whiscash, it's just got a couple of Pokemon that are still good, but just happen to have lower base stats. This team is the closest so far to an even 3,000, which would be about the average for this video. But we've now entered the top 3 for Hoenn, and coming in 3rd place is the Fire-type gym leader, Flannery. 3,020 base stat total is nothing to scoff at, and all but 2 of her Pokemon are solid. Chandelure, Magmortar, Houndoom, and Blaziken are all excellent fire types. The Torkoal and the Camerupt are the 2 that are bringing the team down in terms of stats, but they're still pretty okay Pokemon in their own right. Chandelure, Magmortar, and Blaziken are contributing so many points to this base stat total, though Flannery absolutely deserves this 3rd place spot. And between her and Blaine, it's kind of interesting seeing just how high of a base stat total fire types tend to have on average. After Flannery, though, is the 2nd place gym leader in Hoenn, Roxanne, with 3,025, just beating Flannery by 5 points. She's evolved her Nosepass into Probopass, which is adding a lot of stats to this team. She also has the 2 Hoenn fossils, and a Unova fossil in the form of Caracosta. She rounds the team out with Aggron and Golem, which are fantastic additions. All of these Pokemon are excellent, very close to 500, if not higher. This is a phenomenal team. And it's so cool seeing the very first gym leader you're supposed to fight in this region up near the top of this list. The strongest gym leader in Hoenn, though, is who you would probably expect. It is the player character's father, Norman, the normal type gym leader. And he is number 1 for a single overpowered reason. That Slacking has an insane base stat total of 670 just by itself, which even puts some legendary Pokemon to shame. If Slacking didn't have such a ridiculously high base stat total just by itself, Norman would actually be 2nd or 3rd place after Roxanne and Flannery, but because Slacking is so overpowered, he's number 1 in Hoenn. The rest of his team isn't really anything special. If the Ambipom has Technician, that's a really powerful threat. The Bouffalante is pretty good, and Staraptor is always powerful. Exploud is just a generic run-of-the-mill normal type, and at least he's got some type coverage with the grass-type Sawsbuck. The star of the show is the Slacking, though, and he's kind of in 1st place on a technicality. But either way, congratulations, Norman. He is the number 1 gym leader in Hoenn. Still a good 250 points below Claire, though, so he's not getting close to her. We are moving right along. Up next is the Sinnoh region with the next set of 8 gym leaders. Coming in last place in Sinnoh is, again, the first gym leader, Rourke, with a base stat total of 2,785. And I'm seeing something on his team that is having the same effect that it had on Brock's team. I will never understand why these gym leaders don't evolve their Onyxes, but it is what it is. He's got Rampardos, he's got Probopass, he's got Golem, all 3 of which are contributing great stats to this team. Onyx, though, and even the Sudowoodo are really dragging this team down. Rourke is rightfully in dead last in Sinnoh, and 2nd to last isn't even close. After Rourke, and with a pretty significant step up of almost 150 points, we have Crasher Wake with a base stat total of 2,930. Empoleon and Gyarados are the 2 stars of this team. Those 2 alone are bringing the total value way up. Quagsire and Gastrodon are 2 examples of really good type combinations that have low stats. The Water-Ground type combination is phenomenal, and the fact Wake has 2 of them on his team is nice. It opens the door to Grass-type weaknesses, but at least they're tanky. But their low stats and the Luminion's low stats are what make this team suffer. After Wake, we have Fantina, the Ghost Specialist, and her team is pretty solid. Dusknoir, Gengar, Mismagius, Spiritomb. She has several Pokemon in common with Morty, but this team is objectively better. The Rotom and Drifblim provide some decent coverage, and Spiritomb's lack of a weakness is always nice. If she gave the Rotom a different form, it would actually bump her team up quite a bit. Unfortunately, it would lose its Ghost typing if she did that, so it's understandable why she keeps it in its base form. After Fantina is Maylene, the superior fighting gym leader to Brawly. Her team's base stat total is 2,982, putting her about 50 points above Brawly. This is an excellent team with great type coverage. Steel, Fire, Poison, Psychic, and again, there's that no-guard Machamp. The Gallade, the Lucario, and Infernape are adding tremendous stats to this team. Medicham and Toxicroak are above average, but they're not quite at that 500 level. Machamp is right at it, so again, 4 out of 6 ain't bad. This is a solid team for Maylene. However, defeating her by a single point, that's crazy, is Volkner at 2,983. These electric-type gym leaders seem to have a lot of the same Pokemon. Electrode and Raichu have been on every single electric trainer's team so far, but Volkner also comes packing the Jolteon, Luxray, and Electivire, all three of which are cranking up the stat total. Like Fantina, Volkner also has a Rotom, however in this case I don't understand why he isn't giving it another form. It would contribute way more base stats to his team, and it could give him some more type coverage too. If he replaces the Electrode and gives the Rotom a form, Volkner could be in 2nd or 3rd place. The actual 3rd place gym leader in Sinnoh is Gardenia, with a solid lineup of grass types. Not quite as good as Erica, she's only sitting at 2,994, but still comparable. Torterra, Leafeon, Tangrowth, and Roserade all have tremendous stats. 4 out of 6 ain't bad. The Carnivine and the Cherrim are what's bringing the team down a little bit, but the other 4 have such good stats that it really makes up for it. And it's nice to see that Gardenia focuses on Pokemon from her home region. Moving on to 2nd place in Sinnoh is Candice with a very average team. Her team's base stat total is 3,019, putting her right in that middle range. Half of her team is just above the 500 mark, the other half is just below the 500 mark, so it evens out. The Mamoswine, Glaceon, and Weavile are the stars of the show. Frostlass, Abomasnow, and Glalie aren't bad per se, they're just not quite at that level. Still, the type coverage on this team is great. She's got Dark, Grass, Ghost, and Ground, complementing her Ice specialty, so not a bad team by Candice by any metric. But can the top gym leader in Sinnoh dethrone Claire as the #1 leader in this video? #1 in Sinnoh is Byron, the Steel-type trainer, and the answer is no, not yet. Byron is just barely better than Candice at 3,035, putting him so far as the lowest top gym leader in any of the regions. But hey, at least he evolved his Onix into a Steelix. Way to go, Byron. Magnezone, Aggron, Steelix, and Bastiodon all contribute great stats to this team. Bronzong is another one of those Pokemon that are just below the average mark. Forretress's stats kind of lack, but all in all, the team is really good, and the type coverage is fantastic. We've covered 4 out of the 5 regions so far. If you've made it this far in the video and you're enjoying the content, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up on the video as it lets me know that I did a good job with this one and you want to see more. And I hope you consider subscribing to the channel for more Pokemon videos. But now let's move on to the final region, Unova, which actually has the most gym leaders to go over. There are 13 gym leaders to talk about in the Unova region, and that's just because between Black and White and Black 2 and White 2, there were some changes in the gym leader lineup, and so this game represents all of them. But let's just get into it. Let's see if any of the Unova gym leaders can dethrone Claire and take her spot as the #1 gym leader in Generation 5. In Unova, we're starting with Lenora, one of 2 normal-type gym leaders. Interestingly enough, they're both at the bottom. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Lenora's team is hot garbage. Her ace is quite literally the evolved form of an early route rodent Pokemon. Kangaskhan is the strongest Pokemon in terms of base stats, although the Clefable is probably the strongest Pokemon overall. Although it doesn't have the highest stats, the distribution of the stats it does have is really good, and I think it is the strongest Pokemon that Lenora has. Unfortunately, her stat total is sitting at just 2,718, effectively making her the worst gym leader in this entire video. The second to last gym leader in Unova isn't much better. It's Cheren, the rival character from the first games, who takes over the first gym in Black 2 and White 2. He's also a normal type gym leader, and although his Pokemon selection is better than Lenora's, the stat total isn't anything to write home about, sitting at just 2,808. Zangoose, Bouffalant, Stoutland, and even Chinchino is pretty good, but that cast form with a whopping 420 base stats is dragging this team way down. He was way stronger as the rival character in the first games. The next 2 gym leaders are going to illustrate exactly why we have to cover so many in the Unova section. Next up we have Cress, a water-type gym leader who you get the option to battle in the original Black and White. If you chose the Fire starter, you battle Cress, since his typing has an advantage over yours. And half of the water types on this team are pretty good, the other half not so much. Golduck, Azumarill, and Slowking are all excellent, especially if that Azumarill has huge power on it. Floatzel can be okay, but it can't exactly take a hit. Simipour actually does have some pretty decent stats, but that Basculin is dragging everything else down. Still, Cress is technically an early game gym leader, so we shouldn't expect too much from this team, since it's only sitting at a base stat total of 2,853. Just 5 points above him, though, at 2,858, is his brother Silent, the grass-type gym leader, and another one of those 3 that you have the option to fight in Black and White. The only Pokemon really worth mentioning on Silent's team is the Lilligant, which is the only Pokemon with the base stat total over 500. Everything else is below that level, the other closest one being the Simisage at 498. Ferrothorn has a decent typing and really good defenses, but besides that, the rest of the team is kind of lacking. Maractus. Why does he have a Maractus on his team? Leaving the bottom of the list behind, next up we have Elisa, the electric trainer, with a base stat total of 2,883. The Ampharos, Electros, and the Zebstrika are all adding a lot of good stats to this team. Emolga and Stunfisk and the Galvantula are what's bringing it down, and the other 3 just don't have those crazy high stats to compensate for the lower ones. Electros actually does have that crazy high base stat total, but it by itself isn't enough to compensate. This is still a really good team for Elisa. The Emolga is an underrated threat, and Zebstrika always surprises me with just how high its base stat total is, at 498. There's some okay coverage on this team too, between flying, bug, and ground. After Elisa is Roxy at 2,906, not to be confused with the Rock gym leader Roxanne. Roxy's Crobat is doing most of the heavy lifting here. Everything else is below 500 in the base stats, but they're close enough. They're in that average range of Pokemon stats where it's not quite good enough to be 500, but it's not bad enough to be considered something bottom tier. Scolipede is a decent Pokemon, Drapion is a decent Pokemon, even Garbodor and Amoonguss have a niche. And then Seviper's just on there for style points. There's some pretty okay type coverage on this team too, between Bug, Flying, Dark, and Grass. And if we're choosing between the 2 Poison-type gym leaders on this list, I'm taking Roxy over Janine any day. Next up is Berg, the Bug-type gym leader at 2,913 base stats. There's nothing truly exceptional on this team. They're all in that average range of Pokemon that are just below 500. And looking at his team makes me realize just how many Bug Steel types there are. Excavalier, Durant, Caesar, Forretress, and 3 of the Pokemon have a 4x weakness to fire. Maybe not the best lineup of bugs to work in tandem with each other, but at least the base stats are respectable. We're going to go a little bit faster here in Unova. Just beating Berg by 17 points is Marlin, the final gym leader in Black 2 and White 2, with the base stat total of 2,930. Despite some interesting choices on this team, it's actually not that bad. Starmie, Caracosta, and Wailord are excellent Pokemon. Mantine has insane and underrated special defense. Jellicent has cool typing. The Alomomola is the only odd one out. It does have Calm Mind, which can create some issues. The other 5 are the better Pokemon, though, and are carrying Marlin's team, especially that Starmie. With that, we're now in the top 5 of Unova. 5th place goes to Skyla, the flying-type trainer, with 2,963 base stats. Although the type coverage isn't nearly as good as Winona, it's still not bad. Alongside her flying specialty, she has Water, Psychic, Rock, and Dark. The Mandibuzz, Braviary, and Archeops are fantastic flying types with very high base stats. And Swoobat, despite having a lower base stat total, can make things happen with Calm Mind. The Swoobat, Unfezant, and Swanna are bringing her team down, but the other 3 are really good. So remember how we were talking about the Fire-type gym leaders and how their teams have a higher than average base stat total? Well, the same is true for Chili, the 3rd brother out of those gym leader triplets. And as the Fire-type specialist, he has the highest base stat total out of all 3 of them, and it's not even close. At 3,017, he's over 150 points higher than his brothers. Just like with Blaine, he also has a Magmortar and an Arcanine, which are seriously cranking up that base stat total. Simisear is good, Darmanitan is good, and even Heatmore is pretty good. The Camerupt, I would say, is the only outlier that's bringing the team down, but between these 6, he's over 3,000, which is a solid team. We're now in the Unova top 3, and just 3 points ahead of Chili is the Ice Trainer Bryson at 3,020. Interesting how Chili is not the Ice Trainer, but I digress. Weavile, Walrein, and Vanillux are all fantastic with crazy high base stat totals. Beartick is also adding his strength to that. Surprisingly, Dugong and Cryogonal are the 2 odd ones out, And they're not even that bad, they just happen to be the lowest ones in this team. Not a lot of type coverage, but the stats speak for themselves. Not a bad team, Bryson. Although where Bryson lacks type coverage, the second place gym leader in Unova definitely does not. Second place goes to Clay with a whopping 3,029 base stat total. This is an excellent team. Crocodile, Claydol, Excadrill, and Mamoswine are all doing so much to contribute to that base total score. The Seismitoad and Golurk are the two odd ducks out, and again, they're not even that bad, they just happen to be the lowest base stat Pokemon on the team. But this type coverage is fantastic. Steel, Psychic, Dark, Water, Ice, and Ghost. That is a very diverse set of types. But with that, we are on to the last gym leader in Unova, Drayden, the other dragon-type trainer. Can he dethrone Claire and her 3 pseudo-legendary Pokemon and take the top spot as the #1 gym leader in the 5th generation of Pokemon? Let's find out. His team consists of Haxorus, Druddigon, Hydreigon, Flygon, Altaria, and Salamence. 2 pseudo-legendaries ain't bad. It's not Claire's 3, but this team is actually really close. Drayden's total base stat score comes out to 3,235. 80 points below Claire. So close, yet so far. They share the Druddigon and the Altaria on their team. Drayden's Haxorus and Flygon are also contributing huge stats to his total. However, that 3rd pseudo-legendary on Claire's team is just unfair, and it completely shuts out Drayden. But at the very least, he stands as the king of Unova. Drayden is the strongest gym leader in his home region. However, Claire, the cousin of Champion Lance and the Dragon Master of the Johto region, stands supreme as the #1 gym leader in the 5th generation of Pokemon out of all 46 gym leaders. The best of each region, from worst to best, is Sinnoh's Byron at 3,035, Hoenn's Norman at 3,072, Kanto's Blaine at 3,159, Unova's Drayden at 3,235, and then Johto's Claire at 3,315. If we were to make a fun, hypothetical, best of the best gym leader challenge, where the top 8 gym leaders out of this 46 got together and made their own league, this is what it would look like. It would be Clay, Price, Byron, Surge, Norman, Blaine, Drayden, and then Claire. These are the top 8 gym leaders out of this whole video. The worst of each region are Unova's Lenora at 2,718, Sinnoh's Rourke at 2,785, Johto's Falkner at 2,788, Kanto's Janine at 2,818, and Hoenn's Tate and Liza, each at 2,918. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun getting all of this information together and crunching the numbers and seeing which gym leader is the best out of all of them. Again, we did this entirely based off raw base stats, and as we all know, base stats do not paint the complete picture. However, they are an objective measurement of a Pokemon's power level, and if we're comparing teams like this on an even playing field where they're all at the same level and they're all holding battle items, I think this is the most fair metric that we can use. If you think there's a better way to gauge these teams, let me know in the comments below, and I might remake this video with a different set of metrics to measure these gym leaders with. But with that, guys, that's all from me. I hope you have a great rest of your day. This has been Star. Stay stellar. Keep shining, baby.